Hello everybody, my name is Sarah and welcome back to Future Zoologist Academy. Today we're going to be exploring a very unique, very prickly ocean creature that we can find everywhere from coral reefs to the deep sea. Today we're learning all about sea urchins. Let's get into it. Sea urchins are a class of animals with about 950 different species. They belong to the echinoderm phylum, which also includes animals like sea stars and sea cucumbers. We can find sea urchins in almost every single part of the ocean. They can be found in coral reefs, they can be found in exposed tide pools, they can be found in the deep sea, they can even be found in the freezing waters around Antarctica. Sea urchins come in a variety of colors and a variety of sizes. Some of the smallest species are just a few centimeters across, while the biggest species can be almost a foot across. We usually picture sea urchins being round, but there are some very special sea urchins that are flat, like the sand dollars. Like their relatives, sea urchins are benthic, which means we find them on the ocean floor. They move around, crawling across the ocean floor with the help of long suction cups called tube feet. Now these tube feet actually have a couple different jobs. Like we just said, tube feet help them to move. But their tube feet also have the ability to detect chemicals, which is a really fancy way of saying they smell and taste with their tube feet. This is the main way that they sense the environment around them. The tube feet, which remember are suction cups, can also grab little pieces of plankton out of the water, which they sometimes eat, and those tube feet have the ability to absorb oxygen. In other words, they use them for breathing. Sea urchins are well known for their round, spine-covered bodies, but sea urchins are invertebrates, which means they do not have a backbone. That main round part of their body is called a test, and it is made out of calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is the same stuff that makes up a snail shell and a clam's shell. The spines that grow from a sea urchin's test are primarily used for protection. The word urchin actually comes from an old word that translates to hedgehog, thanks to those quill-like spines that cover their bodies. Some urchins have blunt spines that are not very sharp, like a pencil urchin, whereas most sea urchins have long, sharp, pointy spines that cover their test. Most urchins have two types of spines: their primary spines, which are very long, and their secondary spines, which are usually a little bit shorter. Sometimes other animals take advantage of the sea urchin's long spines. There are some small fish that use the sea urchin spines as their shelter for a little bit of extra protection. And if being covered in spines wasn't enough, there are some urchins like the flower urchin, which are venomous. They have these small venomous pinchers that cover their test in addition to their spines. Like we said before, a sea urchin's spines are primarily used for protection. They are not used for hunting, especially because most sea urchins are herbivores. They mostly feed on algae. A sea urchin's mouth is located on the underside of their body, directly in the center. We call it the Aristotle's lantern, and their mouth has 5 sharp teeth that are used to scrape algae off of rocks, or they can be used to chew through larger pieces of algae like kelp. When too many sea urchins live in a place like a kelp forest, it can be a big problem. They chew through the base of the kelp, causing the rest of the kelp to float away. But for the most part, sea urchins can be very helpful for the ocean ecosystem. As they're using their 5 teeth to scrape algae off of rocks, they often break the little pieces of rock up into these microscopic little fragments that become nutrients. These nutrients float around in the ocean and are used by things like phytoplankton. Phytoplankton is a microscopic algae that floats around all throughout the ocean. Phytoplankton is the foundation of most ocean food webs, and sea urchins give them nutrients so they can grow and survive. Sea urchins themselves are not predators, but they do have a couple great ways to defend themselves from predators like those spines and some of those venomous pinchers we mentioned before. And yet, some predators are still able to feed on sea urchins. Some large fish, Wolf eels, some species of sharks, and sea otters are some of their main predators. The few predators that sea urchins have are very important because, as we said before, in some parts of the ocean they are overpopulated. This happens very rapidly because of the way sea urchins reproduce. Sea urchins reproduce by spawning, where lots of sea urchins all at the same time release their genetic material, their eggs and their sperm, into the water column. When they meet and they form a larva, like a little baby sea urchin, they just kind of float around in the water as plankton before they get big enough to settle down to the ocean floor, where they continue to develop. Because of this reproductive strategy and their lack of predators, sea urchin populations can grow very, very quickly. And scientists used to think that sea urchins had a pretty short lifespan, but recently we've discovered that some species of sea urchins can live for more than 100 years. Sea urchins are interesting for us to discuss for conservation because most species are not endangered. We're not worried about most sea urchin species becoming extinct. In fact, their overpopulation actually is what threatens some ocean ecosystems like kelp forests. One way that people work to protect these ocean ecosystems is by fishing for sea urchins. Eating sea urchins is a delicacy in some places. We call it uni when it's on the menu for people. And one way that you can help protect ocean ecosystems like kelp forest is by trying uni next time you have the chance. All right, you guys, thank you so very much for joining me today to learn all about sea urchins. If you would like to learn even more, do quizzes, activities, projects, be sure to click that link below to visit our website, and we'll see you next time.